And the Edict of Nantes in 1598 grants the Huguenot minority certain rights. It grants the Huguenot minority the right to live in Huguenot towns. They're allowed to live there and practice freely in those towns and educate their children freely in those towns in the Huguenot faith. They're allowed to fortify those towns and defend those towns from attacks. And Huguenots elsewhere cannot openly practice or openly proselytize. Huguenots outside of these towns cannot seek to convert Catholics and cannot try to educate Catholic children to their side. So there's limited Huguenot religious freedom outside of these towns. But likewise, Catholics can't go into these towns and try to convert the Huguenots. And one final thing, this grants the Huguenots civil rights. It allows Huguenots to serve in the government and to serve in the military. And so this is important. It basically says that there will not be a religious qualification for serving in government. Henry IV, therefore, can be called a politique, right? And there's many. This term is a French word, obviously, and it refers to these people during these French wars of religion, these civil wars, that begin to say, you know what, religion's not that important to fight over. And so these politiques are calling for national unity, political unity, peace. And they suggest that religious, having multiple religions is okay. And so Henry IV is an example of a politique. He actually puts it into practice. One historian notes how, it's not the people of France that wanted religious toleration. They didn't. They were willing to fight. They were continuing fighting. No one was happy. The Catholics hated the Huguenots, and the Huguenots hated the Catholics, and they both want to get rid of each other, and they're both perfectly happy in the, sort of trying to get rid of the other side. So it's not the people of France that demand religious toleration. It's the king who demands it in this Edict of Nantes. One of the questions that you encountered, I think, on one of your tests was how, Elizabeth was a politique. Right, Elizabeth in England was similar to that, and that she made, everyone had to be Anglican, but she defined Anglicanism very broadly. So it wasn't clear specific things, there was leeway. And she sort of tolerated some of these reformed, more Calvinist-style religions. And so she was a politique too, where she prioritized, political unity over, say, religious unity. Okay, finally, the 30 Years' War in Germany. Now, this 30 Years' War is very important because we're going to have this be several things all at once. It is a war within Germany over religion, and this is a war between the Catholics and the Protestants. And why are we having this war? Didn't the Peace of Augsburg resolve this? Well, after this is the Peace of Westphalia. Didn't the Peace of Augsburg resolve this? Well, yes, the Peace of Augsburg allowed Lutherans to practice in their areas, where the Lutheran princes were in charge, but it didn't say anything about Calvinists. And so now there's Calvinist princes that want to be Calvinist areas, and Calvinism is spreading and threatening Catholicism in different areas. And so this is a religious war. Secondly, though, this is a political struggle between our same dynamics. Instead of it being king versus noble, the terms we use here in the Holy Roman Empire is emperor versus the princes. And so we've got an emperor, the Habsburg emperor down in Vienna, who's trying to centralize the Holy Roman Empire. Just like we'll see kings trying to do, Elizabeth and Henry VIII trying to do in England, just like the French kings are doing in France. He's trying to centralize the Holy Roman Empire, which means reducing the power of the nobles, in this case, of the regional princes. And so, this is a struggle between emperor and prince. So it's not just the religious struggle between Catholic and Protestant, it's a struggle, secondly, a political struggle between emperor and princes. But it's not only that. It's also, thirdly, an international struggle. It's an international struggle between the Habsburg Emperor, who's trying to centralize his country, and other countries that fear the strength of a unified German state. In other words, if the Holy Roman Empire if the Holy Roman Emperor were able to assert authority over all of the empire, then he would be very powerful, and he would threaten leaders elsewhere. Most notably, the arch-rival to the Habsburg Emperor, through the first part of this course, the French king. Right? And so the German Habsburg in Vienna, the emperor there, and the French king have been rivals for power. Right? The Habsburgs, the Spanish Habsburg and the French fighting in Italy, for example. We've seen this dating back for the century before the 30 Years' War. So, it's an international struggle as well between the Holy Roman Empire and foreign states that want to stop the empire from centralizing. Okay, so the phases. This conflict begins with the Bohemian phase. There are many Calvinists in Bohemia. The Catholic emperor wants to strengthen his control over Bohemia, but the nobles in Bohemia want independence from the Catholic emperor. So with the defenestration of Prague, they throw the Catholic emperor's diplomat out the window, and therefore the emperor doesn't like this, so he sends his troops up. Okay, and the Protestant nobles there in Prague, in Bohemia, lose. And they're aided by the Calvinist elector of the Palatinate, and he doesn't really help. You know, he wants to control this area. They declare him the prince of this area, and once again, he's defeated. So the second phase is the Danish phase. The Danes, if you look at a map, you'll see Germany's very large. Denmark, the small little peninsula at the north of Germany, very small. So the Danes have a reason to fear the emperor increasing his power. So the Danes are also Lutheran, so they're also going to be on this Protestant side. So now the Danes are getting involved, and they're, in the second round, also defeated by the emperor, the imperial forces, the Catholic forces of the emperor. Then Sweden, also Lutheran, under the leadership of Gustavus Adolphus, this very, sort of strict Lutheran king, who's organized his army using discipline. He decides that he cannot tolerate the Holy Roman Emperor, who, after the second phase, or during the second phase of this conflict, has his troops moving northward, and actually issues the Edict of Restitution. And the Edict of Restitution says that all Protestant lands, all the lands that were taken from the Catholic Church in the Reformation, are going to be returned to the Catholic Church. So we're talking about a lot of land, a lot of church land, a lot of land that nobles took and enriched themselves from. All of this is now going to be returned to the Catholic Church, which had lost this nearly a century before. And obviously there's many people that don't like this. So the Swedish then get involved. And the third phase is the Swedish phase. The Swedish are able to drive back the imperial forces. And then in the final phase, the French get involved, siding on the Protestant side. The French, if you remember, are Catholic, but they side on the Protestant side of this conflict because their number one concern is not religion. Their number one concern is a weakened German state. They want the Holy Roman Empire to be weak and decentralized so that France will be the dominant country on the continent.